Have you ever had someone disappear on you? Like poof, no goodbye, no closure, no hey, it's not you, it's the oppressive system we live in, just gone?
You didn't see anything.
Well, imagine that happening to you. And then imagine the government Loki being involved. And then throw in a crumbling society, an uninspiring job, and some very questionable male figures, and you've got yourself a novella. Welcome back to the channel. Today's book is about a woman searching for her boyfriend, her purpose, her sanity, and maybe even her country's soul. It's dark, it's deep, and sometimes disturbingly funny. Let me tell you a story. Meet Fouada. She's a trained chemist working at the Ministry of Biochemistry, which sounds impressive until you realize her job involves doing absolutely nothing. This is what we call a sinecure, which is a fancy word for getting paid to sit and slowly disintegrate. Day after day, Fouada is surrounded by dust, inaction, and existential dread. She's depressed because despite her education and training, the ministry is about as helpful to scientific progress as a soggy tissue.
This is nasty.
She believes she could not live and die without the world changing at all, but everything around her seems intent on making sure she leaves no footprint.
I'm the ghost of the Flying Dutchman.
Now enter Farid. Every Tuesday, like clockwork, Fouada meets him, either in a small restaurant when the weather's nice, or at his apartment during those cold Cairo nights. It's her one spark of joy, her one link to the human world. And then, one Tuesday, Farid doesn't show up. No text, no call, no apology, just absence. The phone is silent, his apartment is closed, and Fouada? She's spiraling.
Where is he?
She keeps dialing his number. It's a 5-digit number that lives on her fingertips like a ghost code. She scans buses, crowded streets, hoping to find his face. But the more she searches, the more she realizes she barely knew anything about Farid. Not his parents, not his job, not even his last name. Just a restaurant, a phone number, and some memories.
Up and vanished like a fart in the wind.
Then, as if to symbolize everything crumbling, the restaurant itself is demolished by the municipality. In its place, a wall with the municipal's name slapped on it. Ah yes, nothing says we care like replacing love with bureaucracy. And that's when the question hits Fouada and us. Was Farid even real? Or was he just an illusion, a dream, a byproduct of loneliness and hope?
It's been 84 years.
Her breakdown is gradual and painful. She loses her sense of time, her clarity, and eventually even her mother, who was her last source of support. All the while, her inner world unfolds. Her childhood, her relationship with her parents, and her drive to do something meaningful. Now let's pause for a second and talk about some of the characters. Starting with Fouada's father, who, let's be honest, gets one of the most hilariously brutal literary takedowns I've ever read. She says,
Her father was dead, and she had perhaps been a little happy when he died, although not for any particular reason. He had been nothing particular in her life.
Ouch. But wait, there's more.
Her father flooded the bathroom when he took a bath, soaked the living room when he left the bathroom, threw his dirty clothes everywhere, raised his gruff voice from time to time, coughed and spat a lot, and blew his nose loudly. His handkerchief was very large and always filthy.
And my personal favorite.
That day, the teacher had asked the class, "Where are these things germs to be found, girls?" "Do you know where germs are found, Fouada?" Fouada got to her feet and said in a loud, confident voice, "Yes, miss. Germs are found in my father's handkerchief."
I laughed, then I cringed, then I laughed again. This isn't just comedic detail, it's symbolic. Her father becomes a walking metaphor for uselessness, decay, and all things repulsive about patriarchal authority. And this theme repeats. Take the director at the ministry. When Fouada sees him exiting his car, the description is almost theatrical.
The pointed, black tip of a man's shoe, attached to a short, thin, grey-clad leg, then a large, white, conical head with a small, smooth patch in the centre, reflecting the sunlight like a mirror, Square, grey shoulders emerged next, followed by the second, short, thin leg. This body, emerging limb by limb, reminded her of a birth she had seen when she was a child. She saw the body laboriously climb the stairs. On each step it paused, as if to catch its breath, and jerked its neck back. The large head swayed as if it would fall.
And then there's Saati, her landlord, who she sees through a peephole.
So, portly body was leaning against the window, supported by legs that were thin, like those of a large bird. His eyes, now like a frog's, she thought, darted behind the thick glasses. It seemed to her that before her was a strange type of unknown terrestrial reptile that might be dangerous.
That's from page 82. Basically, every man in this book, except Farid, who might not even exist, is either grotesque, inept, or both. But that's not laziness on El Saadawi's part. It's deliberate. These men aren't people. They're symbols. So let's unpack that. Searching is a novella, yes, but it's also a psychological portrait, a political allegory, and a feminist critique wrapped in a 114-page package. Fouada's search for Farid? Well, it's also a search for meaning in a corrupt, patriarchal, bureaucratic world. Farid could very well be a symbol of hope, of youth, of rebellion, of the future that never came. The grotesque male characters represent the state, the system, the overlords who hold power but honestly contribute nothing. They flood bathrooms, bark orders, and build concrete walls over memories. The ministry where Fouada works, it's Egypt itself, once proud, now rusting, unable to empower its best minds, especially if those minds belong to women. Farid's disappearance, the restaurant's demolition, her mother's death, it all strips Fouada of her last ties to meaning and belonging. It's a total collapse of the personal and the political. And that's the brilliance of this novella. It's small, but it echoes. I'll be honest, reading Searching is not exactly fun in the traditional sense. There were moments I felt claustrophobic, even angry. I almost stopped when the male caricatures became too much, but I pushed through, and I'm glad I did. Because what El Saadawi does here is not just storytelling, it's a scream. A scream against stagnation, against erasure, against being forgotten or made invisible. Fouada wants to change the world. She wants to discover something. She wants to live a life that means something. And in that, she speaks for so many, especially for women whose ambitions are drowned in the mud of routine, repression, and patriarchy. The book I've been talking about is Searching by Nawal El Saadawi, translated from Arabic by Shirley Eber. First published in 1968, and later in English in 1991, it remains astonishingly relevant today. It's short, but don't let that fool you. Every page cuts deep. If you've ever felt invisible, stifled, or lost in a system that doesn't care whether you live or die, this book will find you.
Yeah, they do say it makes you crazy.
Now, about the author. Nawal El Saadawi was not just a writer. She was a doctor, a public health director, and a fearless activist. Born in the Egyptian village of Kafr Tala, she qualified as a doctor in 1955 and rose to become director of public health. But her outspoken feminist views and her critiques of both religious and state oppression got her dismissed, and later imprisoned under the Sadat regime in 1980. That didn't stop her. She continued to write, speak, and fight for women's rights all over the world. Her first nonfiction work, Women and Sex, published in 1972, was a bombshell in the Arab world. Her life was defined by courage, speaking truth to power and refusing to be silent. And Searching is just one piece of her legacy. So should you read Searching? Absolutely. It's not light, it's not easy, but it's real, raw, and unforgettable. And if you do read it, let me know what you think. Did Farid exist? Was he a metaphor? Or did the state just vanish him like it vanishes everything inconvenient? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you're interested in diving deeper into this book, I've left some links down in the description. You can use it to grab yourself a copy and keep the adventure going. And if you're in the mood for more great reads, don't go just yet. Click on one of the videos popping up right now that I think you'll love. And don't forget to give this review a like, leave a comment, or even subscribe if you'd like to see more. Every bit of support helps us grow this little community of book lovers. See you in the next one.